Okay, so we will look at some applications of the pigeonhole principle in graph theory. The first application is of the handshake theorem that states that in any graph G with more than one vertex, there should be at least two vertices of the same degree. So let's recollect, what is the degree of a vertex? The number of edges incident with it, right? That's the degree of a vertex. And of course here I am not allowing for graphs to have loops and parallel edges. That is, a graph, an edge cannot have, a vertex cannot have an edge from itself to itself. And there can be only one edge between two vertices. You cannot have more than one edges. We don't allow for parallel edges. The proof of this is quite simple. So to prove this, you have to simply notice one fact. Okay, you should ask yourself, given a vertex, what can its degree possibly be? Okay, let's say suppose this has n vertices. Okay, so given a vertex, what is the possible degree of that vertex? It can lie between 0 and n minus 1, right? These are n choices. But there is another one observation which you should make, that is, it is not possible to have a vertex of degree 0 and a vertex of degree n minus 1. Why? What does it mean to say that there is a vertex of degree 0? That means no other vertex is adjacent to it, right? And what does it mean to say that you have a vertex of degree n minus 1? It is adjacent to every other vertex, right? So if you have a vertex of degree n minus 1, then no other vertex can have no other vertex can have degree 0, right? So therefore the set of all degrees, okay, will be of cardinality less than n minus 1, less than or equal to n minus 1. Okay, so we'll say let G be the graph V comma E, and we'll take D to be the set of all the degrees of the vertices in G. Okay, so that would be such that V is in V. Okay, by the argument which we have just made, that is, you cannot have a vertex. Okay, firstly, of course, you have to observe here that D is a subset of 0, 1 up to n minus 1, right? Also, it is not possible that there is a vertex of degree 0 and a vertex of degree n minus 1. The moment there is a vertex of degree n minus 1, there cannot be a vertex of degree 0. Okay, so from that you can see that the cardinality of D should be less than or equal to n minus 1, because this has n number of elements in it. But I am saying that both this and this cannot be in D, so therefore this will have cardinality less than or equal to n minus 1. Now you can look at the function, you can define the function f from the set of vertices to the set of all degrees given by f of v equals the degree of v. Okay, this is a very well defined function, there is no problem in it, and we know that the number of elements here is at least one more than the number of elements here, right? So therefore by the pigeonhole principle, so by the pigeonhole principle, there will be some v1 and v2 in V, v1 not equal to v2, such that f of v1 equals f of v2. In other words, the degree of v1 equals the degree of v2. So this is a basic application of the pigeonhole principle in graph theory. Okay, so we can also look at another application in coloring. So let's see. So what do I mean by coloring? So I'm talking when I talk about coloring of a graph. In this case, I mean coloring of the vertices. Okay. So what would be a valid coloring for a graph? Okay. So actually, this kind of a question comes up from maps. Okay. What's a valid coloring of a map? Okay. Generally, when you color a map, you would not want two adjacent countries to have the same color, right? So similarly, you wouldn't want two adjacent vertices to have the same color. So a valid coloring would be a coloring, color the vertices such that no two adjacent vertices have the same color. Okay. Now, when we put it in little more abstractly, we can simply think of a coloring as an association. Okay, it's an association of the vertices. Okay, coloring we can simply think of where your codomain is the set of all colors. Can you think of that? Right. I want to color vertex V1 red. That means I'm associating V1 with the color red. Okay, so it's simply a function. Okay, so coloring is essentially a function. So, so a coloring of a graph G equals V comma E is a function f from V to some set S. Okay, it is from V to some set S such that if two vertices are adjacent, their f values should be distinct. Okay, if two vertices are adjacent, the f value should be distinct. So if V and W are in V such that V is adjacent to W, then we don't want the value of f of V to be the same as the value of f of W. Right? That's exactly what a coloring is. So there are certain questions which we would like to ask when we talk about coloring of a graph. Same way how we talk about coloring of a map. So given a graph, a natural question to ask is, what are the least number of colors that you can use to color the graph? Right? What are the least number of colors that you can use to color a graph? Okay. Obviously, if there is at least one edge in that graph, you cannot use one color. Right? If there's at least one edge, you cannot use one color. You can use one color only if all the vertices are of degree 0. Right? That's the natural fact. Think about it again. If you have a triangle in it, right, you will not be able to use two colors. Two colors will not be sufficient. You will have to use at least 3 colors. Right? Similarly, even if you have a K4 in it, you all know what's a K4, complete graph of order 4, you will not be able to use 4 colors. You will have to use more than 4 colors. Okay? So, these are small ways of getting these upper bounds, but there is a nice result which is proved in graph theory, but this is for planar graphs. I think you all are familiar with planar graphs, right? No? Okay, so a planar graph is essentially a graph which you can draw entirely on the plane. Okay, you can draw the graph entirely on the plane without the crossing of edges. See, example, see, can draw is different from is drawn, because a graph is simply a set of vertices with some relation on it. Okay, so these edges which we draw are actually just for intuition. Okay, like example, I can draw this by crossing, right? But this does not mean it's not planar. It is still planar. Why? Because I can take this out and draw it around. So it is still planar. Okay. Yeah, so what exactly are, so I will not discuss with you anything about planar graph. There are some relations which you can prove for planar graphs, which I will not talk about. But there is an interesting result which is proved. It is a very famous result. You can have a look at it when you go home. Okay, so the result is called as the Four coloring theorem. I think some of you all might have heard of it. That is, in a planar graph, you can always color a planar graph with four colors. You can always color, you can always color a planar graph with four colors. Okay. I hope all of you all know that K5 is not a planar graph. You cannot attempt at putting all the 5 edges of a K5 on the plane without crossing. You will find some crossing somewhere. You can't do it. The proof that it's not planar is something which you need to look into. Anyway, so this is a very interesting result which is proved. In fact, I can tell you who it was proved by. So this result, which is called as the Four coloring theorem, it was proved in 1976 by Kenneth Appel and Wolfgang Haken. You can have a look at it online. It's a very interesting result. It tells us that in a map, right, because a map you can think of as a graph. Can everyone see that? So all the, all the regions in the map, right, you have different regions, like you have the countries, or it depends what map you're talking about. You'll have the waterways and whatever. You can think of all of them as vertices, right? And draw an edge between two vertices if they are adjacent, right? So between every country that is the neighbor of India, you would draw an edge, okay, which has some land sharing within, some land attaching India, you would draw an edge. That's the natural way of doing it. And you can see that obviously from a map, the graph which you get corresponding to the map is also planar, because the map to start off with was planar. So you are simply drawing across those, and you're not going to get crossings by doing it in this manner. Okay. So anyway, so that's the Four coloring theorem and then an application of it. But we are not proving the Four coloring theorem. It is quite a difficult theorem to prove. What we are talking about, okay, yeah. So there is another, so there are two questions in a graph. One is, what are the least number of colors that I can use to color a graph? That is one question. And the second question is, and they are related, but the second question is, what is the largest subset of vertices in the graph of non-adjacent vertices? What is the largest subset of vertices, okay, of the graph of non-adjacent vertices? Okay, so obviously if I pick up this thing, let's in fact have a look at some example. That's the way to go about with it. So I have something here. Okay, so you can see that I could take this one and this one, right? That would be 2. Okay, I could also get this one, and the moment I put these two in, I can't put this and I can't put that. Okay, the moment I put these two in, I cannot put this because these are adjacent. Okay, so 1, 2, but I could put this one in. because this is neither adjacent to that nor that. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, that is one way of getting it. Is there a possibility of having 4? See, I can take this vertex. These vertices are independent. If you want to say that a set is independent if no vertices between them are adjacent, then this set is independent, right? You can't, there are no edges between any of these 3 vertices. Can I get a larger set than this? How? Which one? This one? This one? This one and this one? The moment I have this, I cannot put this, I cannot put this, cannot put that. Yes. Oh, this one. Okay. Then this one, this one, and this one. That's right. So you can get 4. Okay. So can you see here? This was an independent. In fact, this is a maximally independent set if you would think about it, because it is a maximal independent set in the sense I cannot add any more vertices to this. But there is still a set of bigger cardinality which is independent. You see? So, as he said, let's have a look at it. You have this one, then the moment we have this, you can't take these two. So, this one, and the moment you have this, you cannot take these two. You have this one and this one. That's 4. Okay. And now, if you attempt at trying 5, you are not going to get in any case. You try and see. And the reason for that, can anyone tell me one good reason as to why you can't get 5? You cannot get an independent set of 5 vertices. Can anyone give me one simple reason for that? The degree? The degree of every vertex is greater than or equal to 2. So the moment I put one vertex in, at least 2 you have to throw out. Okay. The moment I put one vertex in, at least 2 have to be thrown out. So that will tell us that 5 is not possible. So 4 is the thing. So the independence number of this graph is 4. Okay. So that's the 2 questions we ask about a graph. One is, these are the 2 interesting questions we ask. One is, what are the least number of colors I can use to color it? And 2, what is the independence number of the graph? Okay. The biggest set, the biggest in terms of cardinality. Okay. 5? Can you get 5? I hope not. See, the moment you take 1, 2 have to be thrown out. So how many we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, there are 7 here. So that is not a valid argument. You would have to go a step further than that. Can you get 5? Yeah? Is 5 possible? I put 1. I said you can throw out 2, but I have not. You would have to go one step further for the argument, to complete the argument. I thought they were. Yeah, but you can still make that argument. You would have to check for each vertex and see what is the. If I put a vertex of degree 3, then I have to throw out 3, so 6. That would still leave me with 4, right? So that still needs an argument. Anyway, let's try starting to look at vertices of degree 3. If you take this vertex, okay, then compulsorily this will go off, right? This will go off. You can't take this. You cannot take this. You cannot take this. Yeah. You have 2 vertices, so okay. So that's a nice argument. I think he's giving a nice argument. So 5 means that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But then, yes. But or you can choose the which does not form an independent set. Tell me.
We want to choose the maximum number of vertices.
Exactly.
So we have to choose one from adjacent
Yes.
every time.
Yes. Not really. You could choose the rest of the 5. There are 7. But your argument still holds. It's a nice argument. So what he says is that there are 2 of degree 3. So is it possible to push 1 in at every step? Yeah.
2 adjacent.
2 adjacent, yes. Yes. Adjacency makes it. No, why? What if it's not in the independent set? That's what I'm saying. But that's also not possible because if you, in this particular case, that's not possible because if you look at the rest of the 5, it doesn't form an independent set, obviously. Okay, so definitely one, that is a definite argument that if so that any independent set would have to have either this or that, because if both are out, the rest of the 5 would not form an independent set. So that argument still holds. So as you were saying, so if you have this, then you can't have, if you put this in, you can't have 3 of this, right? So what that tells us, that you have to have 1 of these, but still 1 of these if you have this one, so here if you add this one, then this one has to be removed. So 3, that's removing out what? 3, fourth one. Once the fourth one goes out, then you're left with, correct, no? 1, 2, 3. If you put this in, then you can't put this. That's the fourth one. So remove that. So I think once 3 are out, you are done actually. Oh, that's it. Thank you. I did not realize. Okay. So as he said that we have 2 vertices of degree 3 here, right? So if I can show that that every independent set has to have at least one of these 2 vertices of degree 3, then my problem is solved, because those 3 cannot go inside the independent. And we have seen that the rest of the 5 do not form an independent set. The rest of the 5 do not form an independent set. I hope everyone can see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 don't form an independent set, right? Because this is adjacent to this, so it doesn't form. Therefore, at least one of these have to be in the independent set, right? But if this is in the independent set, these 3 cannot be there. So you have 7 minus 3, which is 4. So no independent set can have 5 vertices in it. That's the basic idea. Okay, so that tells us about this. Okay, so let's define what is the meaning of an independent set. So what is an independent set? What is the independence number of a graph? So it is the biggest independent set that you can get. Okay. So for a graph, so we define the independence number of G to B, okay, we will denote it by alpha of G, which is nothing but, so what is this alpha of G? It is the cardinality of S such that S is a subset of V and no two vertices of S are adjacent. Okay, no two vertices of S are adjacent. Okay, and of course the other number, the smallest set of colors, is what we call as the chromatic number of the graph. Okay, should have defined that first. Anyway, so for a graph, it's the so for a graph G equals V comma E, we define the chromatic number, which I will denote by chi of G as the cardinality of S, this is maximum here, I made a mistake, the biggest, so the maximum of this set. Okay, look at all independent set of vertices and take the maximum cardinality. Okay, this is cardinality of S such that f from this is again minimum of this, that is minimum of cardinality of S such that f from V to S is a coloring of G. Again, when I say coloring of G, I mean coloring of the vertices of G. You can also talk about coloring of the edges, which I am not interested here. Okay, so this is the chromatic number and the, now there is a nice relation between these. Okay, which we can easily show. So if G is a graph of n vertices, then we can prove that n is less than or equal to alpha of G times chi of G. Okay. Okay, so let's prove that n is less than or equal to alpha of G times chi of G. So the proof in fact simply comes from the fact, okay, that if you look at all vertices of the same color, okay, what can you say about all vertices of the same color? They are not adjacent, right? Because that's how we are defining a coloring, right? What is a coloring? It is a function such that any two vertices which are adjacent don't have the same color. So if we look at all vertices of the same coloring, so the F inverse of any color, if you fix a color, F inverse of that color is going to be an independent set. Okay, it's going to be an independent set of vertices, and this is the biggest possible independent set that you can have, right? This here is the biggest independent set that you can have. Now, the order of the cardinality of the biggest independent set. So chi of G should be greater than or equal to any F inverse of any color. Okay, so that's what we use, and a little bit of a pigeonhole principle. So let's see here. So we know first of all that there is a coloring, okay, because this is what the minimum coloring required to color a graph, right? So we know that there is some coloring which uses these many colors. Okay, so let f from let us say that the vertices of okay, so let V to S be a coloring such that the cardinality of S is chi of G. Okay. Now we know from the pigeonhole principle that there exists, by the pigeonhole principle we know that there exists some element S of S such that F inverse of S, right, the cardinality of F inverse of S is greater than or equal to the number of elements in the domain, which is n upon the number of elements in the codomain, that is cardinality of S or chi G. Okay. Now as we have discussed, the pullback of any color should be an independent set. So this is an independent set. Okay. So as F inverse of S is an independent set, okay, what happens is its cardinality has to be less than the maximal, than the cardinality of the maximal, or not than the biggest independent set. Okay, maximal independent would mean something different. The cardinality of F inverse of S should be less than or equal to chi G, right? Because F inverse of S will be some element over here, right? F inverse of S will be some element, some set S here, because it's an independent set. Okay. No two elements of this can be adjacent, otherwise they would not be given the same color. Okay. So since this happens, what we have here is sigma G is greater than or equal to n upon chi G, or in other words, n is less than or equal to sigma G into chi G. Of course, this tells us something interesting about planar graphs also. Can you see that? With planar graphs, using the coloring theorem, this would tell you that n has to be less than or equal to 4 times sigma G, because we know by the coloring theorem that any planar graph, in any planar graph, we know that chi G is less than or equal to 4. That's what the coloring theorem tells us. So in any planar graph, you would have that n is less than or equal to 4 times sigma G. Anyway, so this is the basic application of pigeonhole principle. Okay, so we will prove that any graph with 2n vertices and n square plus 1 edges has a triangle. Okay, the proof when n is equal to 2 is obvious. Okay, this proof is quite obvious. In fact, when n is equal to 2, that is 2 vertices and 5 edges, there is only one. Up to isomorphism, there is just one graph, that is this. Okay. So for this, you can see there are 2 triangles in fact. Okay. Now we assume the result for any graph with n minus 1 vertices. Therefore, if you have a graph with n minus 1 vertices, okay. In fact, let me just switch this slightly. We'll assume it for any graph with n vertices, and we'll take G to be a graph of n plus 1 vertices. Okay. Assume the result for any graph of n vertices. That means if a graph has n vertices and n square plus 1 edges, then they assume it has a triangle. And let's take G to be a graph of n plus 1 vertices, and n plus 1 the whole square, 2n vertices, 2n plus 2 vertices, and n square plus 1 edges. Okay, these many edges. So this would be n square plus 2n plus 2. I need to show that G has a triangle. So there is a neat trick in this. Okay, take two vertices which are adjacent, say A and B. Okay, pay attention. Take two vertices A and B which are adjacent. That's what we are doing here. Okay, now you take G to be a subgraph of G prime to be a subgraph of G. Okay, now which are the vertices of G? The vertices of G prime would be all vertices of G except for A and B. Okay, so that is the vertices difference A and B. And what would be the edges of G prime? Does anyone know? So it would be all the edges of G other than those which are emitting. It will be all the edges of G, right? It will be all the edges of G such that the edges are incident only with vertices here. That means what we don't want, obviously we don't want the edges coming from A and B into G prime, because those vertices are not in G prime. So is that okay? So you have some edges emitting from A and B into G prime. Yeah, so we have some edges emitting from A and B into G prime. Okay, we have some edges of G prime. Okay, and yeah, now how many vertices does G prime have? How many edges vertices does G prime have? How many? G has 2n plus 2 vertices, right? So how many vertices G prime has? 2n, right? So this has 2n vertices. Suppose the number of edges here, okay, was more than n square plus 1 or greater than or equal to n square plus 1, then by the induction hypothesis there would be a triangle. Is that okay? Suppose the number of vertices here, so number of edges here was greater than n square plus 1, then by the induction hypothesis there would be a triangle. So let's have a look at it. So suppose the number of edges in E prime was greater than or equal to n square plus 1, then G prime, and hence G would have a triangle. Okay, I am actually going by contradiction. I have not made, so assume that G has no triangle. Okay, we are making that assumption that G has no triangle. So that would contradict this assumption. Okay, therefore I want to say that therefore the number of edges in G prime would be, if it's not greater than or equal to n square, it should be at most n square, right? The number of edges here should be, that means among these, all these edges which are here, there are some edges here, okay, some edges here, they will be at most n square. Okay, they will be at most n square. Now ask yourself, how many of these blue edges will be there? If these are at most n square, how many blue edges will be there? Overall, we know that there are n square plus 1, that is n square plus 2n plus 2 edges, right? Overall, there are n square plus 2n plus 2 edges, right? At most n square here. That means at least, so at most n square here plus this one edge is here, right? At most n square here plus this one edge. So these blue edges will be at least this number, remove from that n square and remove from that this one edge. Is that okay? The number of, I am asking you how many of these blue edges are there. So the number of edges emitting from A and B to G prime is at least how many? So n square plus 2n plus 2 minus these, what is that? N square, which are possibly at most n square here, right? If there are less than that, even more will be there here. So that's fine. So minus n square and remove out this one edge also, right? Everything else has to emit from A and B into G prime, right? All other edges have to emit from A and B into G prime. So minus 1, which is exactly 2n plus 1. So you have these two edges, okay? You have these two edges, and these blue edges have to be at least 2n plus 1. How many vertices are here? 2n. So there are 2n vertices here and 2n plus 1 edges emitting from A and B into those 2n vertices, which means that by the pigeonhole principle, the version of the pigeonhole principle which I am using is the first version, that is of the relations. Okay, you have to set up a relation between these vertices and AB. So you will say that AB is either A is related to these vertices if there is an edge, there is a blue edge from A to B to this vertex. Again here you are going, so the number of elements in the relation will be greater than or equal to 2n plus 1. Number of elements in the relation would be exactly the number of blue edges, okay, which would be, so by the pigeonhole principle you would see that there should be at least one vertex here, right, which A is adjacent to and B is adjacent to, because there are 2n plus 1 edges emitting from A and B, but there are just 2n vertices here. So there should be at least one vertex which is adjacent to both A and B, okay. So therefore by so I'll say as therefore by the pigeonhole principle, it is the first version of the pigeonhole principle, there exists an X in V prime such that A and B is adjacent to X. That proves our result, right? Because you have a X here, should have had one more color, right? You have an X here which is adjacent both to A and to B, right? So that gives you a triangle. Okay, so this proves our result. Okay, so we will prove that up to isomorphism Kn cross n is the only triangle free graph with 2n vertices and n square edges. So for n equals 1 there is absolutely nothing to prove, right, because that has just one edge, so it cannot have a there is only one graph up to isomorphism with two vertices and one edge, right. So that's there is nothing to prove in that. So we assume the result for n and we want to prove it for n plus 1. So we take G to be a triangle free graph with 2n plus 2 vertices and n plus 1 the whole square edges. Okay. So the induction goes in this manner. Okay. We take two vertices A and B which are adjacent. Okay. In this manner. Take G prime just like last time. I'm going to take G prime to be the subgraph of G with all vertices other than AB. Okay, so this would be if G is V comma E, this is V comma E, then this would have to be V difference A comma B comma E prime. Again, E prime will be defined like how we defined it last time. That is the set of all edges of G which are not incident with any of either A or B. Okay. Your E prime would be all the edges of G which are neither incident with A nor with B. So you're going to have these edges, let's call them as blue edges again, which enter into G prime. Okay. Let me not draw anything with triangles because it's triangle free. Okay. Now, I am going to show that this G prime here is going to be isomorphic to Kn cross n. And how do I prove that? I know one, that this has to be triangle free because G is triangle free. So any subgraph with has to be triangle free. I know that this has 2n vertices because G has 2n plus 2 vertices. Subtract 2 from that, you get 2n vertices. The only thing I need to show is that it has n square edges. Okay, so let's ask ourselves two basic questions. What happens if the number of edges here is greater than n square? If the number of vertices here, number of edges here is greater than n square, that means it will have at least n square plus 1 edges. What does that mean? It is going to have a triangle. So the number of edges here has to be less than or equal to n square. Okay. Now what happens if the number of edges are strictly less than n square? Then look at the edges emitting from A and B into G prime. Okay. How many edges will emit from A and B into G prime? If it has strictly less than n square, then the number of edges emitting from A and B into G prime, so emitting from A and B to G prime would be in fact greater than or equal to that is n square plus 2n plus 1 minus, okay, here we said that there are strictly less than n square edges, so minus n square minus 1, right? It has at most n square minus 1 edges, okay, plus you minus this one out. So what are you left with? How much are you left with? That is the number of edges emitting from A and B into G prime. That would be exactly 2n, I think, n square, what is it that I have missed? Am I getting some error somewhere? This is 2n plus 1. So the number which emits from here will be n square plus the total number minus what is here, that is n square minus 1, right? Is it right? N square minus 1 minus this one, right? Is there an error? Yeah? This would be, I'm getting 2n plus 3 Last time I got 2n plus 1. Why are there 2 extra coming? I should possibly get 1 extra. You will have to just check this if it's wrong. No, because what happens if there are exactly n square? There are exactly n square, then this would mean this minus n square minus 1 the whole thing. Oh, why am I subtracting? Minus, I already subtracted here, I am subtracting twice. So minus n square plus 1. Correct, right? So n square minus 1 plus 1. Okay, this cancels. This gives us exactly 2n plus 1. Correct? So 2n plus 1. I subtracted twice by mistake. Okay, so you have 2n plus 1. So can you see what has happened? The edges emitting, the blue edges are going to be at least 2n plus 1. But what does that mean? Similar to the previous argument, what does that mean? There are 2n vertices here and there are 2n plus 1 blue edges. What does that mean? That at least one of these vertex will be adjacent to both A and B. There are 2n plus 1 edges and 2n vertices. So at least one of these vertex will be adjacent to both A and B. So you have here some x which would be adjacent to both A and B, giving you a triangle. And there are no triangles, hence that doesn't take place. What does this tell us? That, okay, so this tells us that this is not a possibility. Okay, that is the number of edges here, the number of edges here cannot be less than n square. So we have shown that the number of edges here cannot be more than n square, and we have shown that it cannot be less than n square. So there is only one possibility, that the number of edges here has to be exactly n square. Okay, so the moment this has exactly n square, that means this is going to be isomorphic to kn cross n. Okay, so this is isomorphic to kn cross n. So we have this isomorphic to kn cross n. There is an edge here. Okay, now to complete the proof, what I need to show, okay, by the way, how many blue edges will be there? This has n square edges, right? There are n square edges here. How many blue edges are there? N square here, so 2n plus, no, how many? Total number of edges are, so the number of blue edges are 2n, that's right. Okay, number of blue edges are 2n plus this one here, right? So there are n square here, 2n blue edges and one edge between A and B. Okay, so to complete this argument, I would simply need to show that A is adjacent to all of the V2s, or of course all adjacent to V1, but that also doesn't make a difference, and B is adjacent to all V1s, right? So that's what I would need to do. First, let's see what are the things that we can observe here. So let's look at the edges emitting from A. Okay, yeah, so it is not possible that A is adjacent both to vertices in V1 and V2. Can anyone tell me why? What will happen if A is adjacent both to vertices in V2 and V1? Yeah? You will get a triangle. Why? If A is adjacent to vertex in V1 and V2, you can see here, and V2, there is already an edge here. right? So with these two, you're going to get a triangle. So that does not take place. Therefore, A can only be adjacent to either vertices in V2 or in V1. Let us say that A is only adjacent to vertices in V2. So A only is adjacent to vertices in V2. We don't know it takes up all of these, but only adjacent to vertices in V2. Therefore, B, if A is only adjacent to vertices in V2, B cannot be adjacent to B cannot be adjacent to, okay, same idea, B cannot be adjacent to both V1 and V2, okay. I still need to make one argument. Just a second. So if I have one here, yeah. So let us ask the question, how many edges emit from A and B? Okay. Now, they can be at most n edges emitting from A into G prime, into V2. Can anyone tell me why? How many edges are here? N. How many vertices? There are n vertices here, right? So if there are more than n vertices, sorry, there are more than n edges, you will get, yeah, that is not possible in fact, right, because A is only adjacent to these. So it is quite clear that, because see, A can only be adjacent to V2, right, there are only n vertices here, so therefore this can have only n edges emitting from it. Similarly, since B can only be adjacent to vertices either from V1 or V2, they can be at most n here. But the total number of vertices emitting out is 2n, right? So there is no other option. You have to have n vertices emitting from A and n vertices emitting from B. Okay, I hope you have got the argument. So there has to be n vertices emitting from A, and now we know A, they have to be these. There is no other option. This has to be only these, because there are n. Now ask yourself about B. Can B be adjacent to any of these vertices? No, because that will give us a triangle, right? So therefore, B has to only be adjacent to these vertices. So this gives us our K n plus 1 cross n plus 1. Okay, that's the way you prove the result.